Hi, I'm Steve Kinsley, and I'm going to present a poster on the optimization of our integrated quality assessment, which is also our IQA assessment. I'll use that term throughout the rest of the slide. I would first of all like to thank Joanne Chia and David Skanke, who helped tremendously in the preparation of these slides and are wonderful colleagues to work with. So let's start off first of all in what we're going to cover in this poster. And first will be just a description of what is the IQA process. The second will be an improvement we've come up with, which is making this process work much, much better for us. And the third and most important one for you is basically how you as an applicant or a DMF holder can help facilitate our process, which again will allow us to do better and faster reviews for you, get better information to you, which will lead to better drug products for both the United States and the world. First of all, the IQA team consists of an application technical lead, and this is the person responsible for overseeing the scientific content of the team. We have a regulatory business process manager, and they are the person responsible for to coordinate the actual process and to make sure we meet all our goal dates. We have discipline reviewers, which again are the individuals that are actually part of it. And this is the important thing of the IQA as a team process, is that going back in the history of the FDA, the CMC reviewer used to be one reviewer who would review the entire process, the drug substance, the drug product, the manufacturing, the facilities. And there's a real plus to that because you have one person that leads for continuity through the process. But the minus to that is the fact that it's very hard to be an expert in all these areas. And you can think about your own process development at your company. You have a team of people, a team of experts that do this process to make the drug. It only makes sense that we would have a team of experts to review it. Now, finally, we're going to have additional technical advisors as needed based on your application. And this, again, would be a case where it's an unusual drug substance, an unusual drug product. Different types of disciplines would be needed. For example, if you would make a sterile product, we might need somebody with a microbiologic background that normally would not be a reviewer for a drug substance. It would be a simple tablet. So again, that would happen in the team also. Now, when we look at this process graphically, we have at the central of the team the RBPM and the ATL. We have all the reviewers who will feed in information. They will all be talking to each other, and this is our team. This is the integrated quality assessment. So what this improved for us was, first of all, it gave much more consistent assessments. Second, it reviews the documentation time, because again, since you have multiple people on this, all parts of this process can happen simultaneously. With only one person doing it, necessarily they have to go from the substance to the product and around. Whereas with the team, all the reviews can be happening simultaneously. This also facilitated the idea of the review and the communication between the teams. The fact that we had a formal process, once you start to go to a process like this, we have different people, you have to maintain communication. So basically, the IQA process effectively aligns a patient-focused and a risk-based drug product quality recommendation. The process is actually used for biologic applications, for NUDUP applications, and abbreviated NUDUP applications. So the IQA process we actually use across all types of drugs we review. And again, it includes a multidiscipline team that is made up of, at a minimum, a drug substance, a drug product, a manufacturing, and a facility assessor. Now, it turns out in practice, what we found was that when we have an RBPM and they have a pool of drug substance reviewers they can choose from, a pool of drug product and manufacturing and pharmaceutics, there's an issue. And that we worked out that basically each RBPM worked with at least 17 different ATLs and on average about 109 different reviewers over the year. And so right away you have consistency issues, you have communication issues. It is very difficult for an RBPM to understand the different workings of this many people. So there's a tremendous communication barrier, and it's increased due to each member of the team being from such a large pool. So what we've done instead, and this is the improvement I talked with you about, is we use a vertical aligned team. So this gives us a smaller pool. So basically what happens now is instead of an RBPM being choosing from this whole team, we now have a consistent team assigned to them. So when a new application comes in, based on review loads, based on expertise, they can pick different people. Now that doesn't stop us from saying that for a particular review, this RBPM might have to pick somebody over here that has a specific expertise that's necessary for that review. But in most cases, they're going to be able to assign from a consistent team. So this is going to give you much more consistency in the review. So it promotes much more consistent review practice and actually increases the interaction and familiarity because now these reviewers are very used to working with each other. So basically, we redesigned our current process with an aligned team, and the small group structure reduces our communication barriers, increases our efficiency, and allows for better team management. So all over this has been a success. We have just started this, so we're going to be looking at terms to see how well this works, to see how well our teams actually share data, to make sure we have collaboration between team members, to assess communication, assessment, and finally, whether we can meet the goal dates better. And so far, this has all been happening through the process. Now, as far as the DMF and the IQA process, the DMF holder is almost never the applicant submitting the ANDA. So these are two separate entities. The relationship between them is a business relationship. The ANDA necessarily can only share certain information with the DMF holder. The DMF holder can only share certain information with the ANDA holder. And so for a drug to be approved, the DMF must be assessed as adequate. So we cannot approve a drug unless the DMF that is part of that application is adequate. And the IQA process only works if all the data is available. So basically, if we have the IQA process and the DMF, the assessment for the drug assessment is a DMF, if something happens that the DMF does not communicate the information, we can't do the process. So even though the DMF holder is not formally the applicant, the DMF holder is a very important person to this process. So best practices for a DMF holder. First of all, make sure that the letters of authorization are up to date and submitted to the FDA in a timely manner. The reason for this is we cannot review a DMF without a valid LOA, and that LOA must be issued to the legal entity, which is the applicant. It must be dated, and both the DMF and the applicant have to submit a copy of this LOA to the FDA so that we can do the review. Now, this is being done to protect the proprietary information of the DMF. This is why we do this. Okay, we have to have your permission to review the DMF. Now, if we send you any communications, which would be deficiencies, comments, or information requests, please return them by the requested date, or if possible, sooner. Now, the reason for this, again, is that if we don't have the information, we cannot review it, and if we cannot review it, we cannot make approvals of applications. Now, the third thing, and again, this is something that is up to the DMF holder and the applicant, because we do not require that you share information. However, having communication between the holder and the applicant can help to avoid submission of DMF and amendments, which could impact the review. And basically what would happen in this case is, let's say a DMF holder wants to make a minor change. They want to add 5% more solvent. Okay, that change normally would not be a safety issue. However, if they submit it very close to an applicant due date, the fact that we have an open amendment in the DMF would say that we could not approve the application. And so this again would force the goal date to go later. And this does happen. Late submissions in the cycle. Now, again, what the applicant can do if they choose to is they can try to work with their DMF holders that when a change is made, say you might want to hold off on that change, or you might want to make that change a little bit sooner so that we might have an application in. Now, again, as far as communications go, the FDA can communicate with the applicant. And the FDA will protect any proprietary information, and the FDA does require that you share all information. So when an application is made, all the information in the application must be shared with the FDA so that we can review it directly, and the FDA communicates with the review back to the applicant. Now, if we look at a DMF holder, again, given that we have an LOA, the FDA has the right to look at all the information from the DMF because we need to do that to be able to assess the safety. Again, the FDA will give you feedback on the evaluation of your DMF, and those are proprietary communications and protected communications. Now, the FDA also has to communicate to the public. We are a government agency. There are certain things we must communicate to the public, and of course the public communicates with us. Now, as far as cross communications, information from the applicant one other thing is the applicant can talk to a DMF holder, and the DMF holder can talk to the applicant. We do not require that these discussions are shared with the FDA. You have the right to have proprietary information between the applicant and the DMF holder. Now, what cannot happen is information from the applicant cannot be given through the FDA to the DMF holder. So the FDA cannot tell you anything about the application if you're a DMF holder. Conversely, information from the DMF holder that is given to the FDA cannot be shared with an applicant. That is protected information. It is proprietary information. We do not share that. What will never happen is that information from a DMF holder or from an applicant is shared with the public. And so again, even though we have communications between the FDA, the applicant, the FDA, the DMF holder, the FDA, and the public, we have very strict rules for what information can be shared and what can't be shared. And it is the FDA's obligation to protect any proprietary information that a DMF holder or an applicant shares with us. So basically, we have to have an LOA before we can review a DMF. And both the holder and the applicant must submit a copy of the letter to the FDA. If that does not happen, we cannot review a DMF for an applicant. Now, lastly, the FDA will not disclose even the existence of an application before an approval letter is sent to the applicant, which means that we can't tell a DMF holder that when you submit an amendment, you're holding off on an application. We cannot tell you that. So this is something that you may choose to discuss with the applicant, or the applicant may choose to discuss with the DMF holder. But the FDA cannot tell an applicant, it cannot tell a DMF holder that anything about the application, nor can they tell the applicant anything about the DMF. So in conclusion, the integrated process incorporates a broad expertise, and it also fits in with our motto, which is one quality voice. The team must speak as one voice, which is a collection of parts. The new aligned team process looks like it's leading to better and more timely reviews. Now, you as a DMF holder can assist to the process by responding to our deficiencies, comments, and information requests by the date we request or sooner. That will help us in the process tremendously. And finally, the DMF holder and the applicant can communicate with each other. We do not enter into these communications. It's up to you whether you want to. But if you communicate better with each other, it will lead to fewer delays in our assessment cycle. Thank you very much. And again, on this slide, there are a few other talks you might want to look at, which will tie some of these things together. And again, if you notice the one down here, which is effective communication of strategies, would be a very good talk to attend for this. So thank you very much for looking at this. If you have any questions, please list those questions and we will respond to all questions that you ask. Thank you very much.